everyone, myself Deepak Gupta, logging on this platform of YouTube College Dekho, and today we will understand the journey of Indian economy after independence. So, as we have discussed earlier, that before independence, the British used the Indian resources only for their personal benefits and the benefits of their queen. So, they say that we were used only as a feeder economy for the UK. So once they left in 1947 and we got our independence up in 1947 and framed our constitution which came into existence in 1950. So the first and foremost question that was to be solved that in accordance with the directive principles and the policies and the objectives of the constitution, you have to choose between primarily three kind of economies which were either capitalist economy, socialist economy, or the mixed economy. So these three economies, which are normally defined as that, because as you understand that there are in an economy two people, one who needs, who have wants known as households or the consumers, and the others who satisfy their needs, that is who produces the goods and the services, that is the firm, and that is why we say that it is a two-sector economy. But we also understood in the earlier sessions that there is a government which in some cases serves the purpose of household and purchases goods from the firm, and which in some cases serves as the purpose of the firm to the household by providing them the goods. So we can say that this firm, commonly known as the private sector, this government can be known as the public sector because it has to work for the public, and then we have the consumer. So basically, in an economy where government is only for the governance and all the production is presumed to be done only by the private firms, is normally known as capitalist economy. So capitalist economy, as was the case in most of the West Europe, that all the production was primarily done by the private sector. And if we say that the firm is actually not there and all the activities of the firm are effectively performed by the government, so there are only a few circumstances exceptionally where a private firm is in place and all the firms, all the functions of the firm are effectively being done by the government. So government is performing two functions in the economy. First, acting as a firm and obviously as a governor. So that's that kind of economy where the primary production is done by the government. So we can have that it is a two-sector economy with household and government acting as the firm is known as the socialist economy. And the primary example was the China. And there was a third option which had to act like the way we have shown it, that is government is there but it may act as the consumer by buying goods from the firm. It means the private sector was there and it was also in the production business where it provided goods not to just the consumers but also to the firms who acted as consumers to buy the goods from the government. So here the production is presumed to be done by both the private sector and the government sector. The first and foremost decision that was to be taken after 1950, that which kind of economy we should opt for. So our elected PM Nehru was in a dilemma because they believed that in a democratic poor country like India, this capitalism can be chronic. It may not uplift the lives of the common people of the country and it may just benefit a few rich, and therefore they rejected this idea of capitalist economy. And they also believed that because all our resources have already been drained out of the country and the government is not in a position that it may have the funds to start all the production activities on its own. मतलब सिंपल भाषा में गवर्नमेंट इतनी गरीब हो चुकी थी, उन्हें पता था कि इतना पैसा हमारे पास नहीं है और अभी हम एक नए कंट्री स्टार्ट करने जा रहे हैं इन अ वे जहाँ नई गवर्नमेंट्स हैं, नई मैनेजमेंट स्टार्ट होगी, जहाँ अभी गवर्नमेंट के पास फंड नहीं है. Until we have the funds, we will not be able to start an industry. So if we take all the responsibility of production, then it may not start, or even if it starts, it will be very slow. So therefore, they believe that a socialist economy may not be helpful because we will not be able to start the production, and hence they were forced to reject this concept of socialist economy. And they also believed that unlike the way where British control everything. If we follow the socialist model, then it will be working on the same lines like the British model, where no private sector was there, and in the lack of the private sector, there was huge problems of non-manufacturing, no infrastructure development, no employment, no production, and poverty and unemployment. Therefore, they believed that it was a grave need to support the private sector. So conceptually, they underlined the importance of the private sector, and hence they opted for the mixed economic system. They opted for the mixed economic system. So the most important part to begin with the Indian economic development in the phase of 1950 to 1990 is that we adopted the mixed economic system. The mixed economic system. So we accepted this mixed economic system. Just a moment. Now, the other thing that is to be taken into account, that once they decided the model which was to be followed, they also had to stress on the overall economic plan. That is how they will take India on the path of economic development and the journey of improving the economic lives of the people of India, because only that will improve the poverty and the unemployment situation in the country. And for that, they identify the concept of 5 year plans, commonly known as Panchvarshiya Yojana. And they set up a concept of planning commission. So they tried that there should be a planning commission who will foresee India's growth plans for the 5 years. So we will create the plans in the beginning, and then we will try to follow all the activities as per the plan for the next 5 years, and then at the end of such 5 year plan we will review the performance which has been achieved in these 5 years, and after that introspection, if there is any anomaly in the last year plan, that will be improved, and on the basis of that retrospection a fresh 5 year plan for the next 5 years will be created, and we will try to take India to a prosperous economic path through this 5 year plan journey. And this policies continued till 1990, and even after that, until unless it was changed in the year 1819 under the present Modi government, which shifted or which liquidated the planning commission and replaced it with Niti Ayog, which is more interactive planning process. How and where, that will be discussed when we will discussing the third phase of the Indian economic development. But the most important aspect, the most important aspect of Indian economic development is that we identified that India's economy will neither be socialist nor be capitalist, but it will be a mixed economy. And our economy, as per the directive principles and the objectives of the Constitution, will be based on 5 year plans, and those 5 year plans will be created by a planning commission, which was to be commissioned every 5 years. So, as the word suggests, this plan will denote the activities to be performed in the future. So these 5 year plans have various objectives. Obviously, the objective will be for the financial well being of the public and the country as a whole. But the objectives which were enlisted were the growth, that is the growth of the economy through the growth in the GDP. It was the modernization, because until we adapt to new modern and new technology, there will not be any improve in the production capacities of the country. And even if we presume that we were a agrarian economy, so we have to incorporate new techniques and new support methods to the agriculturists, that is the farmers, so that there is more output, and if the more output will solve the food needs and also uplift the lives of the farmers. If we are able to do that, then, and if we are able to create more industries which are modern and updated, then it will be a step towards self-reliance, and that self-reliance will try to reduce our imports, and we will try to export as much as possible, and that self-reliance will result to low imports and high exports. And if we are able to achieve that, then it will give us foreign exchange strengthening, and that foreign exchange strengthening will always support the Indian economy. And if we do all this, then it should not be the growth of only a few, it has to be an equity based. That is, the growth should be shared by all. So we say, as they say, that this should be the growth for all and not a selected few, and not a selected few. So it should not be a growth of the few, and that was the primary objective of not adapting to a capitalist economy, because the primary concern of the capitalist economy was that there may be a benefit of only a few, and hence we idealized these primary objectives, and every 5 year plan body will need to create whatever plan they need to make, keeping in mind these primary four objectives. These primary four objectives. Now, once these four objectives were finalized, now these four objectives has to be implemented sector wise, and the primary sector of the Indian economy development has to be agriculture, because it was the primary occupation in our country. So there are always two things, that we first have to identify the problems, and once we identify the problem, then we have to not just think, but we also have to give the solutions to such problem. We also have to give solutions to such problems. So the basic problem was low productivity, because as we discussed in our earlier sessions, that the British did not support the agriculturists, that is the farmers, through neither they provided good quality seeds, neither they provided any new technology, neither they provided any dams or infrastructure which could have controlled the droughts and the floods, and hence there were as such no support to the agriculture is sorry, to increase their productivity. Secondly, that there was a basic problem that there was a case of disguised unemployment. That is, it was happening that few people were thinking that they are working in the agriculture sector, but actually they were not working effectively because the wages that they were getting were effectively nullified. So in a way, few people were in a disguise of being employed, but actually they were unemployed. So there has to be a system where the wages given to such agricultural workers is substantial to support their food needs. And because I just said that there was no measures taken to control floods or the drought, because there was no dams that were made, so we had a huge dependence on rains. So in a way, I have underlined the problem as well as the solution. So this problem can be solved only with the construction of dams. And if these dams will be able to store extra water when there are extra rains, and that will give water in the case of drought, and also support the non-flow of excess water in the case of excess rains, and thus how it will reduce the chances of drought as well as the floods. Then we also had a problem of subsistence farming. This subsistence farming is a special word because what is happening that when a farmer grows a crop, and if we say that it is a food crop, then some part of the food crop will be used or kept by him for his self use, and the surplus will be sold. So this will happen only if the output is high. So if the output is high and because the self-use is limited, then the farmer will be always be inclined to sell the surplus, and this surplus sale will satisfy the needs, food needs of the country, and also give money to the farmer, thereby increasing his quality of the life. But because there were low productivity, the farmers were only able to create food for their self-use, and therefore there were food problems in the country because there were no proper food available. And this problem subsistence farming, which resulted in the farmer growing crops only for their self-use, was to be removed. Now, linked to this low productivity is this case of subsistence farming, and is this another case of that we were very low on technology. And this low use of technology because of no support from the British in the earlier era was one of the key reasons for the non-development, or we can say that this non-support on technology front was the major reason for most of the problems that we are discussing. Okay. Then we discussed in the earlier session that there was a land ownership system known as land settlement system or Jamidari system, where the ownership of the land of the farmers was taken by the British government, and they were appointed the landowners, the zamindars, which acted as intermediary between the government and the farmers, and they collected huge unbearable lagans from such farmers. So what the government did, that this was the primary cause of non-productivity also along with technology, because the farmers either owned very few small pieces of land or they owned nothing. So government abolished this land settlement system, zamindari system, and therefore the farmers were made the landowners on their own. So what was the problem, that in the earlier case there was this problem of conflict between the tenant farmer and owner zamindar because of the issues of lagan. And when the system was abolished, then this conflict was resolved, and this resolution of conflict resulted This resolution of conflict resulted only because of the abolition of the land settlement system. And it also solved another problem of small land holdings. So if you see, various problems that were prevalent were required only a few solutions. For example, the work on technology front, the work on the infrastructure front, such as dams construction, and the abolition of the zamindari system could have solved the major problems, could have solved the major problems of the agriculture sector, and hence we can say that the solution of such problems was first the abolition of land settlement system, which solved this issue of conflict between farmer and the zamindar, this issue of small holding, and this issue of subsistence farming, this issue of low productivity, this issue of disguised unemployment. So all these issues were in a way improved by the abolition of the land settlement system. Also, those intermediaries, all those intermediaries which were there between the farmer and the government were removed, and this also resulted in the removal of these problems. Then a land ceiling was installed where not any single person can own huge lands. तो जो जमींदार थे जिनके पास बहुत बड़ी बड़ी लैंड थी, उनकी लैंड ओनरशिप पे लिमिट लगाने से वो जो लैंड एक्स्ट्रा थी वो उनसे वापस लेके जो लैंडलेस ओनर्स थे, जो लैंडलेस फार्मर्स, उनको दे दी गई. सो इन ए वे दिस कैपिंग ऑफ लैंड सीलिंग enabled the government to take away excess land owned by such zamindars which were given to them by the British, and such extra land acquired back was given away to the landless farmers, which solved their problem of subsistence farming, which solved their problems of subsistence farming. In addition, there were new technologies enabled. So we tried to remove the problem of low productivity by the adoption of new technology, and we started a green revolution where high yield variant seeds were provided by the agricultural research institutes to the farmers, and they were able to give high output, high yield, high productivity. And this high productivity, so this high yield variety seeds were the main cause of technology support given by the government to the farmers, and these high yield variety seeds as developed by the research institutes resulted in green resolution because of huge increase in the output of the farmers, and that solved the problems of low productivity subsistence farming, and also caused in the improvement of food situation in the country, the situation of the food control of the country. So this caused for the creation of surplus which was marketable. So now the farmer was not just able to create the food crop for his own self consumption, but was able to create the surplus which he was able to sell in the market, and that serves two purposes. It provided food for the public, and it provided money, economic prosperity to the farmer who was working. And most importantly, if this production keeps on growing, then the government was able to create the buffer stock, and this buffer stock provided a sense of food security to the public, provided food security for the government as well as the public. So all this resulted in huge economic benefit, huge economic benefit to poor farmers who became landowners, whose output increased, and they were able to produce surplus grains which they were able to sell and improve their work and life conditions. In addition to this, there came two problems that were farmers also needed pesticides, and there has to be a equity for distribution of HYV. That is, some farmers complained that the such yield, such high variety variant seeds were not distributed equally. That there were a few who were given in preference to other. That is why some people complained of the equity distribution or the absence of such equity distribution in these seeds, and also that such seeds were more prone to pest attacks, and therefore they needed the pesticides. Also, also there was a grand demand for the conceptualization or involvement of the subsidy, where any loss of the farmer should be subsidized, or government should provide certain financial benefits for the for the purchase of pesticides, insecticides, and all other things which they need for their agricultural purposes. So this demand for the subsidy were taken in two ways. Some economists supported this demand of providing subsidy by the government to the farmers, and some other didn't supported it with their reasons. But overall, the subsidies were initiated, and various kind of cash and kind benefits. For example, primary form of subsidy was that if they needed urea, that is a kind of fertilizer, then it was given at a reduced rate. So the farmer paid less, and the company wants to sell it for more because the cost was more, and therefore the price difference was paid by the government in the difference in the form of subsidy. Various kind of subsidies were created, and that all helped in improving the quality of the agriculture risk and the improvement of the agriculture sector. We will discuss the further development of other sectors in our next session on the topic.